Alright, so this is a tutorial that I'm going to create that's just going to walk you through some really basic photo editing that you might do to just about any photo that you take. Um, Less is more with this, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in here in just a second. So I've got my photo. I'm going to drag it into Photoshop, open it up in Photoshop. And the first thing I'm going to do that I always do is I'm going to right click or control click on the Mac and go to duplicate layer. And the reason why I'm copying the background layer is so that I have a reference that I can look at my old layer and compare whether or not I'm making improvements. And also, in case something goes wrong, it's really easy just to pull up that background layer and start again. So then I'm going to go File, Save As, and for now I'm just going to save right on the desktop. And it's going to be Mugen and Boris, and the format is going to be Photoshop so that it keeps my layers separate. Okay, so I've got my new file set up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with some basic cropping. So if you go to this tool here, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth tool down. Click on those frames there, and I'm going to adjust it a little bit. And you can see right when I pull it up, the rule of thirds grid appears because that's what's turned on over here. Okay, you've got different options here for different purposes, but the rule of thirds grid is pretty good if you're trying to set something up with that. So I'm going to have Boris. He's kind of our main subject here. And I'm going to kind of focus on his head as an intersection of the rule of thirds. So it's kind of an interesting composition. Now, once I've got the edges sort of dragged around on my crop tool and I've lined up the rule of thirds mark where I want, all I'm going to do is hit enter or return, and it's applied the cropping. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust some of the more like exposure qualities of the image. So I'm going to go to the image menu, adjustments, and I'm going to go into brightness and contrast. Now I can lighten it up. You don't want to get too light because you start losing a lot of detail. And I can also darken it depending on what I need to do. I think the exposure for this is okay. I'm going to pull up the contrast to make the picture look a little more bold. But again, you don't want to get carried away with any of these things. It makes things look like really fake and just not very nice. So I'm going to kind of dial these around a little bit, and I kind of like that. And if I turn preview on and off, I could see the difference between the before and the after. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And the reason why I'm doing that is if you look at Boris's head here, it's a little bit out of focus. So I'm going to go to Unsharp Mask. I'm going to drag my preview over. I can sort of adjust where it goes over here as well. And I can look at like the edge of his head here, maybe the edge of his eye. And you do not want to really go crazy with this either. Again, if you kind of crank this up, bring up the radius and all that, you can see it's like, just looks really fake. And you can't take a photo that's out of focus and make it in focus, but you can take a photo that's just like a little bit soft and kind of crisp it up a little bit. But if you have a bad photo to begin with, there's not a lot you can do. This isn't like an excellent photo right here, but I'll work with it. So you can see the difference again by clicking preview on and off. Okay, I'm actually going to cancel out of this, and I am going to make a selection around Boris's head, but I'm going to feather it by about 30 pixels so it doesn't have a really sharp edge. And I'm just going to make a loose selection around him, and I'm going to apply the focus just to that area. So filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. And now you can see if I were to go crazy on it, it's only applying it to what's within the selection. And that the fact that I feathered the selection that was up here a second ago to 30 pixels means that it sort of fades. So it's not a really sharp transition from one to the next. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of sharpening just to that area. You can kind of see it really shows up on those stones in the background. So I'm actually going to feather my selection to maybe 80. And let's reselect. Okay, go back up to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. And now should be a little bit more of a gradual fade from those really sharp stones and his head to the rest of his body and all those kind of good stuff. Okay. So again, preview on and off, just sharpening it up a little bit. Okay, and this is really by feel. You just got to kind of dial it up till it looks nice. Okay, hit OK. Now I'm going to Command D for deselect, or go to select menu and deselect, Command D. Okay, so now I can turn it on and off and kind of see where we've come. The photo overall looks a little brighter, stronger contrast, looks a little cleaner. I'm going to go now to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. And with this, if there's something a little off about the color of the picture, I can make these little minor adjustments. Kind of make it a little more rich there. And if I pull the saturation up, I can make the colors more bold. Now you do not want to go crazy off the charts here. It looks like a horrible 80s movie kind of a thing. So I'm going to keep that kind of moderated. Lightness in this mode, I really would recommend not messing with either. It tends to flatten things out really, really bad. So maybe boosting saturation a little bit sometimes is okay. So that's one way to kind of adjust your colors. You can also go under specific color bands. So if I wanted to go to the greens, I can boost up. If you look at the background, it's only affecting the greens back there. I'm actually going to bring the saturation down in the greens, and it makes them virtually black and white. Kind of dial around here a little bit. So a lot of this is just kind of by feel. All right, I'm going to take my cyans and pull some of those out of the trees too. Just because I've got these beautiful red dogs, and I kind of want them to be the focal point. I don't want anything back there to really distract from it too much. Bring the blues down a little bit. Okay, there's a good bit of that like in their faces and their noses, so I don't want to mess around with that too much. So go from that to that. And let's go back to our reds. And I can dial the red around a little bit. So these dogs aren't fully red, even though they're called a red for this kind of the breed. So I don't want to make them look like they're orange or anything like that. So kind of dial that around a little bit and hit OK. And now I've gone from that to that. Okay. I'm generally pretty happy with this. There's a lot of different ways to do the same things that I showed you. This way is kind of the easiest way, but not necessarily the most powerful or like, technical way. So we'll visit some of those editing techniques in our next tutorial. Okay, thanks for watching.